So is anyone here for the first time? I'm seeing, yeah, it's mostly the regular group now. That's fine. Okay, then we can get straight into it. Krishna, 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 hey. Krishna, 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 hey. Krishna, 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 Rakshamam. Krishna, 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 Pahimam. Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rakshamam. Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Pahimam. I'll start from the principles of good sadhu sangha. And we've gone through the 16. So going back to the first again is number 1. Hear from a liberated, pure devotee of Krishna. So this is what our group is centered around, hearing from Srila Prabhupada in his words, his realizations of the teachings of Krishna and the pastimes of Krishna given in the Krishna book, which is his own personal commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam 10th canto, which details the pastimes of Krishna. And he brings in purports from all the various previous acharyas as well. And so this is hearing from all the pure liberated devotees. Prabhupada has kindly synthesized all of those teachings of different pure devotees in here for our benefit. Okay, so we are on chapter, just finishing actually, chapter 13, on just the last few paragraphs. Sorry, I've got a slight dry throat because of the weather changes. Can anyone say where we were reading up to last week?
So the paragraph,
Sorry, go on.
Paragraph beginning from Krishna to compassion upon Brahma's inability to see.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. I think that's where we are, you're right. So, just to summarize, because it's been a week now, can someone quickly go through the last week's reading for us? And just a summary. Anyone say some of the key points we covered last week? Of course, we read through how the beginning of the pastime the previous week, how Lord Brahma stole the boys and the calves. They were gone for a year. Last week, what we read was how these boys and calves were actually Krishna, and how they played with their parents and their the mother cow and so on. And then we read about Lord Brahma's realizations, his various realizations, as well as Lord Balaram acknowledging that this pastime was happening, as it had been 1 year since his last birthday. Okay, so we're just finishing. Actually, these few paragraphs, they kind of combine into the next section, because Brahma is coming to this realization. These are basically Brahma's thoughts. And then he's going to go from his thoughts to his words in his prayers in the next chapter, which we're coming up to. So, will Linisha be reading first? Or Ammu Mataji? Or both even?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, Linisha, you can begin from this paragraph then.
Krishna took compassion upon Brahma because of his inability to see how Krishna was displaying the forms of Vishnu and transforming himself into calves and cowherd boys, and thus, while fully manifesting the Vishnu expansions, he suddenly pulled his curtain of Yogamaya over the scene. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not visible due to the curtain spread by Yogamaya. That which covers the reality is Mahamaya, or the external energy, which does not allow a conditioned soul to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead beyond the cosmic manifestation. But the energy which partially manifests the Supreme Personality of Godhead and partially does not allow one to see is called Yogamaya. Brahma is not an ordinary conditioned soul. He is far, far superior to all the other demigods, and yet he could not comprehend the display of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, Krishna willingly stopped manifesting any further potency. The conditioned soul not only becomes bewildered, but is completely unable to understand. The curtain of Yogamaya was drawn so that Brahma would not become more and more perplexed.
So this paragraph is, Prabhupada repeats here a few times about this curtain of Yogamaya, isn't it? What does that mean to the devotees present? What does that mean, the curtain of Yogamaya? Think of a curtain. What would that mean? How do you understand that? Well, what is Yogamaya? We've read about Yogamaya and we've read about Mahamaya. So there's two types of coverings. There's one type of covering for the conditioned soul and one type of covering for the liberated soul. Yeah, and Krishna has removed this curtain from Brahma. So Brahma has just seen, in the previous week what we read, was how instead of seeing Krishna with the cowherd boys, he's seeing those cowherd boys turning all of them, each individually, into Narayan or Vishnu forms. They're all turning into the Supreme Lord. And it wasn't a magic act that we read. Each and every single one of them was an individual Vishnu. Every single one of them was Vishnu. He expanded himself again and again unlimitedly. And countless times. So what does it mean then when it's described here that the curtain of Yogamaya was lifted? Can anyone say?
Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Maybe I'm getting confused, but is Yogamaya lifting? So it's not easy to see Krishna unless the mercy of obviously Krishna and also Maya, because when there's a curtain, you can't see anything on that curtain.
Yeah.
And when you open the curtain, you can see the fields or your garden or whatever.
Yeah.
Is that?
That's right. So you can think about it in that way, isn't it? Prabhupada puts things in such he uses such common sense kind of terms in one level. We can understand that, you know, how the way that we open the curtain, isn't it? We can see past the curtain when we open the curtain, isn't it? There's a whole world out there, right? So Krishna, he's covering that world from us by his Mahamaya. For us, we're experiencing, for the conditioned soul, let's say, is experiencing Mahamaya, that we can't see Krishna because this curtain is blocking us. For Yogamaya, she's covering Krishna's potency from us. But here, all of that opulence and that potency of the Supreme Lord was shown to Brahma. Yeah. So Prabhupada writes, the curtain of Yogamaya was drawn so that Brahma would not become more and more perplexed. So when was he perplexed? Can anyone say? When was he confused about?
He was confused when he saw all of the cowherd boys as Vishnu, even though he thought that he had taken them all to
Brahmaloka.
Brahmaloka.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Or if you can even look more broadly, that's exactly when he was confused. That's when Krishna illusioned him. But actually, we can see even more broadly, right from the beginning of the pastime, he was confused. He was under the illusion that he was very powerful, right from the beginning, isn't it? Therefore, he decided to take the cowherd boys, and that was first confusion, because he thought he was very powerful. Yeah. And then the second one was, then as you said, Linisha, that when he came back and the cowherd boys were still there, he was again confused, second time. Yeah. And then the third time was when all those boys, they became Vishnu Murtis. Even more confusing. Because like, who are all these Vishnu Murtis? And you know, like, what was going on was beyond, as Prabhupada says here. Even though he was more superior to all the other demigods, he was far, far superior to other demigods, still, he couldn't comprehend Krishna's display. So again, that was like a third bewilderment. But that bewilderment was because the most recent one, which we just read, is explained here, because the Yoga Maya was removed. When he saw that the boys were still playing with Krishna, he was confused because the Yoga Maya was there. Like everyone in Vrindavan, they thought that those boys were as they were for 1 year, playing with Krishna, because of Yoga Maya. Because of the Leela Shakti, Krishna's Leela Shakti, that could all go on. And even Balaram, he was under the influence of that Leela Shakti. However, that curtain was removed, and then he was like in complete bewilderment, because then he could see actually all of these were Vishnu. Individually, Vishnu expanded himself into each and every individual boy. That was the most perplexing. Okay. So shall we read on?
Okay, Prabhu. When Brahma was relieved from his perplexity, he appeared to awaken from an almost dead state, and he began to open his eyes with great difficulty. Thus he could see the eternal cosmic manifestation with common eyes. He saw all around him the super excellent view of Vrindavan, full of trees, which is the source of life for all living entities. He could appreciate the transcendental land of Vrindavan, where all the living entities are transcendental to ordinary nature. In the forest of Vrindavan, even ferocious animals like tigers live peacefully along with the deer and human beings. He could understand that because of the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vrindavan is transcendental to all other places and is free of lust and greed.
So, any points which stood out for the devotees here? You can speak up on. What's the theme that sticks out from this paragraph? Now that he's awoken. Yes, Kirtika Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
So now he's relieved from his confusion because Krishna has drawn the curtain and he's not able to see what he saw when he was really zonked, probably. And now he can see the trees and he can see the animals. And Vrindavan is it's a transcendental place where tigers and all the ferocious animals live with the herbivores, and there is no lust and greed there. So this is what is apparent to him now.
Yeah, that's right. So he's experiencing Vrindavan now. Okay. So it's like he's gained this realization. He's just come back from the state of all these levels of confusion. And Krishna is mercifully showing him this most special place, Vrindavan Dham. He's able to appreciate now the glories of Vrindavan. Prabhupada writes, the transcendental land of Vrindavan. Because he thought that this little boy, how could he be my Vishnu? I remember we spoke about previous weeks how Vishnu had appeared to him in so many unique and unusual ways from different avatars. For example, Varahadev. How did Varahadev appear? Does anyone remember when we discussed that? Varahadev is a boar incarnation. Yeah. Does anyone remember how he appeared?
From the nostrils.
Yeah. So he appeared from Lord Brahma's nostril, microscopic size, and then he became, bigger than the planets, bigger than the planets. Like they became like footballs for him. They could pick up and throw around. So he'd seen these things. He'd seen Nrsimhadev born out of a pillar, smashed off a pillar and pop out. He's seen, he's seen Varahadev, Vamandev, in the form of a small boy, and then transformed into his feet were, able to reach the tops and the bottoms of the universe, reach the top of the universe. So he's seen all these wonderful things. But he couldn't understand Vrindavan until now. So it just gives us a bit of insight into how special Vrindavan is. And I thought I'd just pull out a quote from the Brahma Samhita. And this is also Brahma's own prayers, where he's appreciating Vrindavan. So he says, Chintamani prakara sadma shugalpa vriksha laksha vriteshu surabhi abhipalayantam lakshmi sahasra satasam brahma sevyamanam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. So he says that, let's see, the translation is, I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor who is tending the cows, yielding all desires, in abodes built with spiritual gems, and surrounded by millions of purpose trees. He is always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds and thousands of Lakshmis or Gopis. So he has a great appreciation for Vrindavan Dham. And like you said, Mataji, that it's a place where even the tigers and the deer are friends. So there's no enmity. So it's completely transcendental, because you cannot find such a place in any planet in this universe, even on Brahma's planet, the top planet. So we can continue reading on, unless anyone would like to comment on this. I notice we have His Grace Sri Bhangananda Prabhu with us as well just now. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Very nice to hear you all discussing Krishna book. Hari Bol. Sorry I haven't been able to join you for such a long time, but tonight I found myself able to come and jump in and join the party. So I'm happy listening to you all. It's very nice. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to Lord Sri Krishna and the Brahma Vimohana Leela.
Jai. Okay, Linisha, would you like to read on?
Okay, Brahma thus found Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, playing the part of a small coward boy. He saw that little child with a lump of food in his left hand, searching out his friends and calves, just as he had actually been doing 1 year before, after their disappearance.
So this is part of his illusion, isn't it? That sometimes when something is extraordinary, then we think, wow, that's really special. But if something is extraordinary and then it's covered by something like super ordinary, my children just, like I have a little girl and she tends to hold the food and walk around, and like, just like a child drops food through the fingers, makes a mess, as these boys were doing just previously in their picnic, and sharing food amongst each other, left hand and the right hand. So when something so superior is covered as something just ordinary, that's actually even more bewildering than all these different features that Lord Vishnu, the different avatars of Krishna exhibited previously, because they're all extraordinary. And so this is why Lord Brahma, he has been in this bewilderment, because he just saw Krishna's pastimes as mundane until now. He's, Vrindavan has been revealed to him. Okay, unless anyone likes to comment, we can continue.
Prabhuji, I have a doubt. So Brahma is again seeing Krishna the way he saw a year ago. So for him it is a moment, we've understood that. But he's again now meditating on that pastime.
So he came back to Vrindavan after a year, and then he saw the whole the Vishnu's opulences.
Yeah.
And he fell down, and then he was unconscious, and he woke up again.
And he's seeing.
And then he's just seeing this little boy, Krishna. He's just seeing this little child. So, and he's appreciating now what Vrindavan is. All of these things have just come from this little child holding a clump of rice, perhaps, or, a lump of food, a morsel of food in his hand.
Curd rice.
Curd rice, is it mentioned? Yeah.
Not here, but previously.
Mm. So that's yeah, you're right, Mataji. So he's just seeing Krishna now, just as an innocent coward boy in Vrindavan. Okay.
Immediately, Brahma descended from his great swan carrier and fell down before the Lord, just like a golden stick. The word used among the Vaishnavas for offering respect is dandavat. This word means falling down like a stick. One should offer respect to the superior Vaishnava by falling down straight with his body just like a stick. So Brahma fell down before the Lord just like a stick to offer respect. And because the complexion of Brahma is golden, he appeared to be like a golden stick, lying down before Lord Krishna. All the 4 helmets on the heads of Brahma touched the lotus feet of Krishna. Brahma, being very joyful, began to shed tears, and he washed the lotus feet of Krishna with his tears. Repeatedly he fell and rose as he recalled the wonderful activities of the Lord. After repeating obeisances for a long time, Brahma stood up and smeared his hands over his eyes. Seeing the Lord before him, he, trembling, began to offer prayers with great respect, humility, and attention. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 13th chapter of Krishna, the sealing of the boys and calves by Brahma.
All right. So we're on the final paragraph of the chapter. So there's many wonderful things we can discuss in this particular paragraph. But let's start from the start. So Prabhupada is giving us the definition of Dandavat. Has anyone heard this term before? Yeah? Yeah? Has anyone not heard this term before? It's okay if you know. I can't see everyone on the video at the moment, so it's hard to engage. It's hard to gauge the participation. Hare Krishna. Thank you, bro. So I was thinking how Lord Brahma, he's actually the head of our sampradaya, isn't it? So he's personally performing this dandavat. He's actually, showing by example. Yeah, the dandavat. Golden dandavat in his case, because he's golden. He is a golden form. So you can imagine how beautiful the scene in front of this small, innocent child, sweet boy, just playing, just looking for his friends. Where's my friends? Where's my friends? And this great deva, he's like the deva amongst devas, as Prabhupada said in the previous paragraph. Even other he was so superior to even other devas, and he's bowing down before this little boy. So for those who are not Krishna conscious, this could be quite an misunderstood. That they worship Lord Brahma with, Brahma is considered with great reverence in Indian cultures. But here, of course, Brahma has overcome the illusion of his position, and he's duly offering respect to Krishna. And Jiva Goswami, he explains in an interesting way how Lord Brahma, he's offering obeisances before Krishna. He has 4 heads, isn't it, Brahma? Yeah, our Brahma of this universe has 4 heads, and he's putting his heads down on the ground with his crown, and only one head is touching the ground, and he's embarrassed, like, I've just been such a fool, and I can only offer obeisance with one. He doesn't offer obeisance to anybody except Vishnu, and he's bowing down to Krishna here, and only one head is touching the ground. The other heads can't touch the ground, and he's feeling embarrassed that he can't offer his heads to Krishna, Jiva Goswami describes. And in that embarrassment, his ecstasy is increasing, as it said here. He's feeling, he's trembling, and there's tears falling from his 8 eyes, his 4 heads, his 8 eyes. And those heads which are not on the ground, they're looking up at Krishna, and they're seeing Krishna from the ground view, and they're seeing how beautiful he is, and then the even more ecstasy increases. So this is the position of Brahma. Now he's offering, and he's doing it for a long time. He gets up and then he tries again to offer obeisances on this side, on this side. He's not quite able to do it even. He feels like he's incapable. And his humility, his ecstasy is increasing. So we come to this final sentence, which I'll read. Seeing the Lord before him, because he's on the ground offering obeisances, but still he can see the Lord. He, trembling, began to offer prayers with great respect, humility, and attention. Okay, these 3 features: with great respect, humility, and attention. I want to just add something here, because this particular sentence, or this particular verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, for the members of ISKCON, for the members of the Hare Krishna movement, is extremely important for the reason that this is the final verse which Srila Prabhupada translated of the Srimad Bhagavatam before he left this planet. So I personally feel this is a very, very important verse. Prabhupada decided to finish his personal commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam at this point. Or Krishna arranged that Prabhupada would finish here with this final sentence of offering prayers with great humility, with great respect, humility, and attention. So I just wanted to bring that in as well. That was the 69th verse, if I'm not mistaken, from the Srimad Bhagavatam, from the 13th chapter. So it was the last verse. 64th verse, rather, I should say. So, as a short paragraph, Prabhupada writes. Perhaps I can just read that also. So this short purport, Prabhupada writes, Brahma, being very joyful, began to shed tears, and he washed the lotus feet of Krishna with his tears. Repeatedly he fell and rose as he recalled the wonderful activities of the Lord. After repeating obeisances for a long time, Brahma stood up and smeared his hands over his eyes. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that the word Lochana indicates that with his two hands he wiped the two eyes on each of his four faces. Seeing the Lord before him, Brahma began to offer prayers with great humility, respect, and attention. This was Prabhupada's final purport from the 64th text of this 13th chapter, the Srimad Bhagavatam. So there's really something to meditate on there. Okay, so we can move on to now the 14th chapter. And you can have the next reader, perhaps, Jai Prakash Prabhu. Thank you, Lenisha. You okay to begin, Prabhu?
Okay. Chapter 14, Prayers offered by Lord Brahma to Lord Krishna. Brahma said, My dear Lord, you are the only worshipable Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead. Therefore, I am offering my humble obeisances and prayers just to please you. Your bodily features are the color of clouds filled with water. You are glittering with a silver electric aura emanating from your yellow garments. Shall I continue the next one? Just a short one. Let me offer my respectful repeated obeisances unto the son of Maharaj Nanda, who is standing before me with conch shell earrings and a peacock feather on his head. His face is beautiful. He is wearing a helmet and is garlanded by forest flowers, and he stands with a morsel of food in his hand. He is decorated with a cane, a buffalo horn bugle, and a flute. He stands before me with small lotus feet.
So now he's offered his obeisances, Lord Brahma, and he's just invocating his prayers now as he's witnessing the Lord. He's describing this very beautiful form, form of a bluish or blackish rain cloud. Yeah. And they said that those clouds which are heavily filled with water, they hold very dark color. Yeah. Sometimes we see those very whitish clouds. Yeah. But when you see the clouds heavy with water, yeah, that's the dark clouds. So this dark cloud is the resemblance of Krishna. So he holds a lot of love. And Prabhupada describes that the spiritual master is also like this. We sing Samsara Davana Lidaloka Dhanaya Karunya Ganaganatam Praptasya Kalyana Vande Guroshi Charanarvinda. Now the spiritual master is also like this rain cloud which comes over this material world. He comes over into this material world, just like how we described Srila Prabhupada, how he came to this world, sent by Krishna, he was sent by Krishna as an instrument of his compassion. Because this world is like a forest fire. So if you can just cast your mind back to, maybe it was like a year ago now, the forest fires of Australia, does anyone remember? This fire was going on for months, I think. Huh? And also in California, there's been forest fires in so many places. These fires are unstoppable. They're not able to stop by any human endeavor, these fires. And they're simply relying on God's mercy, the mercy of the rain, to stop these fires, these forest fires. So it's described the world is like this. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes the world is like a forest fire. And the spiritual master, he comes in the form of a rain cloud also. And he disseminates Krishna consciousness. Or rather, he showers the world with Krishna prema. So this is Krishna. He's actually in that same form, that same color of the rain cloud, which you're reading about. This is the first thing acknowledged by Lord Brahma. Okay. And there are other descriptions here, which are very beautiful. How he has a conch shell earrings. Huh? This is also nice because sometimes we hear Krishna has conch shell earrings, like here. Sometimes we hear Krishna has. Anyone else know? Another form of Krishna's earrings.
Shark-shaped earrings.
Yeah, shark-shaped earrings as well. So for those who are familiar with the Damodar Ashtaka prayers, it is said that Krishna has shark-shaped earrings. Yeah. What is that verse? It's escaped me, but yeah, Kartik soon approaching, so we'll be able to remember that. Krishna has shark-shaped earrings, or here conch shell-shaped earrings, and perhaps so many other wonderful types of decorations. Just reminds me that Krishna, one of Krishna's names is Bhushana Bhushan. Huh? So it's an interesting name because Bhushana is an ornament. Yeah. And Krishna, he wears so many beautiful ornaments. We always read about how Krishna is immaculately dressed, huh? Splendidly dressed. And every day we have the darshan of Krishna on the altar, be in person or online. But this phrase, this term Bhushana Bhushan, it means the ornament of the ornaments. That the ornaments are very beautiful, but when Sri Krishna wears them, they look more beautiful. You know, generally we wear ornaments to make ourselves look beautiful, isn't it? But that's not the case in Krishna. Like Krishna wears the ornaments to make the ornaments look more beautiful. So Krishna is Bhushana. He is the ornament of the ornaments. And so he's decorated with the cane, the buffalo horn bugle, and the flute, and so many other descriptions. His helmet is, and he has a garland of forest flowers. Like that. Okay, we can continue unless there's any comments, questions. Okay, Prabhu.
My dear Lord, people may say that I'm the master of all Vedic knowledge and I'm supposed to be the creator of this universe. But it has been proved now that I cannot understand you who are present before me just like a child. You are playing with your boyfriends and calves, which might imply that you do not even have sufficient education. You are appearing just like a village boy, carrying your food in your hand and searching for your calves. And yet there is so much difference between your body and mine that I cannot estimate the potency of your body, as I have already stated in the Brahma Samhita. Your body is not material.
So anyone have any thoughts they could share on this? So we would discuss a little bit about this. Anyone likes to add? or share any reflections which you've had during the course of the reading. Okay, we can continue.
One thing I could suggest
Yes,
is that in Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 4, Transcendental Knowledge, text 9, which Brahmananda Swami told me once is the most important verse in Bhagavad Gita, as Janma Karma Chame Divyam Evam Yo Veti Tattvataha Chaktva Deham Punarjanma Naiti Ma Meti Sorjana. The one who knows in truth the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities never takes birth again, but he comes to my abode, Arjuna.
Mm.
So this is very important distinction between Krishna's body and our body, because if we meditate on other people's bodies, that is not going to be the supreme destination and leaving this world. But if we meditate on Krishna's body, by hearing of his body, his name, his form, his qualities, his pastimes, like you're all doing, then just this simple exercise is very powerful for giving us the full opportunity to understand him and return home back to Godhead.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, that's so. This is the most beautiful thing, that in Krishna, the Krishna book is not ordinary narrative. It's something we can really truly meditate on and become purified and revive our love for Krishna. And it's such a beautiful way of doing, isn't it? Just remembering how gorgeous Krishna is.
One more thing, Srila Prabhupada explains that this Krishna book, these meditations on Brahman in the most convenient and palatable form.
Sorry, Prabhu, I didn't catch that. Could you just say that again?
Yeah, Srila Prabhupada explained that this Krishna book, these are meditations on Brahman in the most convenient and palatable form.
Ah, so Prabhupada is commenting on the whole Krishna book in this aspect.
Mm.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, Prabhu, would you like to continue? Oh, Kirtika Mataji, yes. Your microphone is muted.
Sorry, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. I am still confused that Brahma, who knows that, who's written the Brahma Samhita, and knows that Krishna's body is not material. So he is the best person to know and understand Krishna compared to us.
Mm.
But even he got perplexed. He got confused on 3 occasions in the same incident. So what are the chances of us? I mean, this is Brahma we are talking of. Who, yeah. So if he can get the avaran, then we have a long journey yet. And yet, it is said that it is so easy. You just chant and you'll be able to get to see Krishna or feel him or experience him. So it's like a paradox. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the chanting is our saving grace, isn't it? Yeah. And the chanting is given to us by whom? Which avatar? Which avatar of Krishna has?
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Right. So that's also very significant in this connection, I believe. Because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's known as Mahavadanyaya. He's very merciful. So he's our saving grace, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He gives what? The highest thing to the lowest people, isn't it? Yeah. He gives the highest thing to the lowest people. So we shouldn't think ourselves very high. because we'll remain very low. Yeah, if we think ourselves very low, and we engage in the process given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then our chances are very high. Okay? So we don't need to worry about that. But at the same time, in just my thoughts on this question is, and of course Sri Bhangananda Prabhu is more qualified to speak, that he's in entering to this pastime. Lord Brahma is entering into this pastime, you know. So for the demigods, it's a great opportunity. Krishna invited the demigods into this pastime before he appeared. Right at the very first chapter, the Surabhi cow, or rather the Mother Earth in the form of a cow, approached Lord Brahma, isn't it? For Krishna to come. And so this is Brahma's opportunity to enter into this pastime. And so there are many levels in which we can look at this, but in this respect to your question, we should see it in that way, that Lord Brahma is engaging in this pastime, and he's trying to show that I'm trying to trick Krishna by the power of my great intelligence, and that's not sufficient, because Krishna bewildered me and bewildered me and bewildered me over and over. So he's glorifying Krishna through this pastime. Yeah? So that's one way of seeing it. Is that okay? I'd like to invite Prabhu to add a few more words, please.
Well, one thing that is very interesting is that this pastime, Krishna's pastimes are all connected in the most wonderful ways. Lord Chaitanya's mercy is extraordinary. And after this pastime, Lord Brahma, he was thinking that I know the next avatar that is going to come is going to be Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And I really don't want to make the same mistake again. So because every conditioned soul is subject to 4 defects, including making mistakes, being illusioned in some way or another at least, and having imperfect senses as well as the cheating propensity, Lord Brahma was praying that he wouldn't make the same foolish mistake again. And being in so many ways omniscient, he went to Sridham Navadvip, knowing that this is the place where Lord Chaitanya would perform his pastime.
You're back on mute,
He prayed that he performed great austerities there, and he prayed sincerely to Lord Chaitanya that he wouldn't be in such a foolish condition again. And Lord Chaitanya very kindly appeared before him in that holy place of Navadvip and advised him that, yes, I'll give you this benediction, Brahma, that in your next birth, you will appear as Haridas Thakur. You'll be born in a family of meat eaters, and you will not be proud, and so you won't make that mistake. In fact, you'll be the acharya of chanting the holy names. And in this way, Brahma, he became known in that birth as Brahma Haridas. And so Lord Chaitanya revealed in this age is the most munificent avatar and gives himself freely to those who approach him. And his request is simply chant the holy names and follow me. And in this way, Lord Chaitanya is so kind and so merciful that he's giving us the opportunity to return home and enter into the highest level of pastimes with the Lord. So this is not because we deserve it or because we have any good qualification. It's simply the most extraordinary mercy of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda that they make themselves so readily available and give us the chance to return home so easily in this incredibly unfortunate, otherwise age of Kali Yuga. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. So you see how it all connects. Thank you, Prabhu. That Brahma goes through this pastime and then he enters into the pastime of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as well. As Haridas Thakur. And he again shows us the great fortune we can attain through chanting the holy names, as he is the Namacharya in that pastime. Jai Prakash Prabhu, if you could please read on.
In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that the body of the Lord is all spiritual. There is no difference between the Lord's body and himself. Each limb of his body can perform the action of all the others. The Lord can see with his hands, he can hear with his eyes, he can accept offerings with his legs, and he can create with his mouth. Brahma continued, your appearance as a cowherd child.
Does anyone know that verse from the Brahma Samhita? We've mentioned it many times, I think, in this reading, and in fact we recite it almost every day. Well, every day at the temple for those of you who attend or observe the morning program. Does anyone know that verse which has been quoted here? Yasya sakalendriya vritimanti pashyanti panti kalayanti chiram jaganti ananda chinmaya sadujjvala vigrahasya govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's the exact translation for that here. So it's an important verse to know. The next time you can see, you can correlate these statements to that verse. So it's important to understand the meanings of the verses which we hear. We pray in the mornings. So what does it mean? Did you catch the meaning there? Can anyone say? Does anyone grab the essence of that?
Can I try? Well, what I think, Hare Krishna, that like every part of his body is like complete, like how we say the Lord eats with his eyes, and I forgot another stuff, but it all says here he can, what it says here, he can hear with his eyes, accept offerings with his legs, you know. But yeah, there's somewhere each limb of his body can perform the actions of all the others, so it's almost like he's every part of him is like complete. He can do everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's far beyond the body of Lord Brahma, isn't it? Brahma is realizing this. He's saying how your body is far superior to mine. And so it's really significant because Prabhupada has selected this verse for us to chant every day. So it's really something to meditate on. Yes, please, Mataji.
So Brahma's body is material?
That's right, Mataji. Brahma's body is in the material world. Yeah. So we discussed last week how he has this very subtle body. He's almost a spiritual body. He has actually, Prabhupada mentions, he has a body of intelligence. Our body is like gross matter, isn't it? Earth, water, fire, air, ether. Yeah. So Brahma's body is very fine, very, very little material substance. But still, only Krishna has this kind of body where one sense is completely able to perform the action of another sense. So we could continue now. Thanks.
Brahma continued, your appearance as a coward child is for the benefit of the devotees, and although I've committed an offense at your lotus feet by stealing away your boys and cows, I can understand that you have bestowed your mercy upon me. This shows your transcendental quality of being very affectionate toward your devotee. But in spite of your great affection for me, I cannot estimate the potency of your bodily activities. It is to be understood that when I, Lord Brahma, the Supreme Personality of this universe, cannot estimate the childlike body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then what to speak of others? And if I cannot estimate the spiritual potency of your childlike body, then what can I understand about your transcendental pastimes? Therefore, as it is said in the Bhagavad Gita, anyone who can understand a little of the transcendental pastimes, appearance and disappearance of the Lord, become immediately eligible to enter into the kingdom of God after quitting the material body. This statement is confirmed in the Vedas, where it is stated, simply by understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can overcome the chain of repeated birth and death. I therefore recommend that people should not try to understand you by their speculative knowledge.
Right, so we discussed a little bit of this verse. Prabhupada recalls from Bhagavad Gita, Janma Karma Chame Divyam. Something that stood out for me was Prabhupada saying how the Vedas, they point out that Krishna is the only one who can help us to overcome birth and death, repeated birth and death. So another name of Krishna is Mukunda. Yeah, we've all heard this name before, Mukunda. Yeah, Mukunda has different meanings. One meaning, a common meaning, is the one who can give mukti. Da means to give. Yeah, so he can give liberation. Only Krishna is known as Mukunda, not Shiva, not Brahma, not anyone else. That name is reserved for Krishna, Mukunda. Yeah. So this is a statement which is confirmed in the Vedas. And another meaning of Mukunda, even the residents of Braj, they call Krishna Mukunda, but not in the same, they don't have the same purport to that word, because Krishna has a lotus-like face. So that word Mukunda also means one who has a lotus-like face. There's a dual meaning. So I found that interesting here. Does anyone else like to share something from this paragraph? Otherwise, we can continue reading.
The best process for understanding you is to submissively give up the speculative process and try to hear about you, either from yourself, as you have given statements in the Bhagavad Gita and many similar Vedic scriptures, or from a realized devotee who has taken shelter at your lotus feet. One has to hear from a devotee without speculation. One does not even need to change his worldly position. He simply has to hear your message. Though you are not understandable by the material senses, simply by hearing about you, one can gradually conquer the nescience of misunderstanding. By your own grace only, you become revealed to a devotee. You are unconquerable by any other means. Speculative knowledge without any trace of devotional service is simply a useless waste of time in the search for you. Devotional service is so important that even a little attempt can raise one to the highest perfectional platform. One should not, therefore, neglect this auspicious process of devotional service and take to the speculative method. By the speculative method, one may gain partial knowledge of your cosmic manifestation, but it is not possible to understand you, the origin of everything. The attempt of persons who are interested only in speculative knowledge is simply wasted labor, like the labor of a person who attempts to gain something by beating an empty husk of rice paddy. A little quantity of paddy can be husked by the grinding wheel, and one can gain some grains of rice.
Okay. So Brahma is giving his realization here in this prayer of how, because of course he's practically full of intelligence. His whole body is intelligence. But even with that much intelligence, he is unable to understand Krishna. So he's saying here like how this speculative process, this process of trying to intellectually understand the Supreme Lord, even though he knows all of the Vedas, even though his wife is Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and Gayatri, you know, still, even though he possesses all this great power, he's not able to understand Krishna by his own strength. So how is it possible to understand Krishna if not by our own strength? Then what is the way to understand Krishna? Yes, Kirtika Mataji?
By his grace, by Krishna's grace.
Absolutely, yeah. There's no other way but Krishna's own willingness to reveal himself to us. And why is that? Why is it that we can't understand Krishna? Why is theoretical knowledge not enough? Can anyone say? Just think about it. Like Krishna is a person, isn't it? Like if I wanted to understand you, and you're a person, we're all persons, we're all individuals. If I wanted to understand you, and I went to your Facebook profile, your Instagram profile, your LinkedIn profile, you know, your CV. I went through your CV. I tried to research everything I could about you. Would that be sufficient? Would that give me a good understanding of who you are and what you've shared about yourself? See, some of you are shaking your heads. Smita Mataji?
No, Prabhuji, that wouldn't be, because to know somebody, you would need to know what they like, what's their favorite color, which wouldn't be in the CV. How to make somebody happy, which wouldn't be in their CV or Facebook or any other way. So you really need to bond with that person to really know about them.
Yeah, that's right. So these celebrities, you know, in the world, the celebrities of the world, there are people who know everything about them, isn't it? They follow them around, you know, stalkers. They're called stalkers. People, they follow around the celebrity. They're completely like crazy about them. Yeah. So this like kind of speculative process, we don't want to become a stalker of Krishna. You know, we don't want to know all of the speculative. We don't want to speculate about Krishna. We don't want to think that we know him because we can recite so many shlokas about him, and we have so much theoretical knowledge. Really, we want to know Krishna. Really, we want to love Krishna. We want to fall in love with Krishna. We want to know him personally. This is our goal. This is the goal of the bhakti yogis. Yeah. So we can actually do that by associating with Krishna personally. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is given that process by the chanting of his names and remembering his form and pastime and qualities. Yeah, by the mercy of the spiritual master. Otherwise, it's said here that speculative knowledge is like the beating of empty husks of rice paddy. Yeah. Does anyone know what that means? Can you describe that?
No.
I don't have any experience of farming, so if anyone can elaborate on that. Yes?
So
No.
I don't have experience of farming either, but I know that rice grows with a husk on top of it.
Yeah.
So in order to get the grain out of the rice, you have to break it free from the husk,
Yeah.
even wheat. So you have to beat it so that the grain separates from the husk.
Yeah.
So if you keep on beating the husk, which is already devoid of the grain, it's of no use, because how much ever you beat it to pulp, it's never going to give you the grain. But even if it's a little bit of husk with the grain inside, if you beat it, you'll get little grains. But without a grain, you can beat the husk and not achieve anything. So it's of no use.
Mm. And so our approach to the Vedas, it could be like that sometimes, you know. We could read pages and pages and pages, but not grab the essence. We may not grab the essence. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada has kindly given us his Bhaktivedanta purports, because Prabhupada has grabbed the essence. And Prabhupada has given it to us in a very clear, in his very raw format. He's constantly reminding us that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Isn't it? So I said that that people who are just, you know, going through these Vedas and, you know, grabbing so much information out of them, and, you know, reciting and you know, quoting and engaged in debate and argument, they have no objective, no goal in mind. It's just simply like beating the husk, empty husk. So Brahma's praying like that, let me not do that. Let me understand you by your own grace, by your own mercy. Okay. We could have the next reader. We've got 15 minutes remaining. So, oh yes, Kirtika Mataji.
Hare Krishna. My dear Lord, there are many instances in the history of human society where a person, after failing to achieve the transcendental platform, engaged himself in devotional service with his body, mind, and words, and that attained the highest perfection state of entering into your abode. The process of understanding you by speculation or mystic meditation are all useless without devotional service. One should therefore engage himself in your devotional service even in his worldly activities, and one should always keep himself near you by the process of hearing and chanting your transcendental glories. Simply by being attached to hearing and chanting your glories, one can attain the highest perfectional stage and enter into your kingdom. If a person, therefore, always keeps in touch with you by hearing and chanting your glories and offers the results of his work for your satisfaction only, he will easily and happily attain entrance into your supreme abode. You are realizable by persons who have cleansed their hearts of all contamination. This cleansing of the heart is made possible by chanting and hearing the glories of your Lordship.
Thank you. Would anyone like to comment on this? Or even the previous one, I believe Chibangananda Prabhu. Would you like to say something?
Well, sometimes people focus simply on the chanting, but actually before we can chant nicely, we have to hear nicely. And by hearing, we can understand, if we hear from the right source, from the right person, we can understand how to chant, and we can also understand how to hear. Just like Arjuna, he heard from Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, and by hearing nicely, he understood. And then his demonstration of his understanding is that he expresses that Krishna, you are that supreme Brahman. And this is declared by all the great sages. So if we want to understand Krishna, he can only be understood by devotional service. And what is sometimes missed is that this hearing process is devotional service. And actually just to hear about Krishna is so important, because if we hear from the right source, we are engaging in devotional service and we are gradually able to understand the glories of Krishna. And this is the whole purpose of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, so that by hearing these transcendental messages, we can become fully realized in understanding and appreciation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and go back home, back to Godhead and live with him.
Yes, so it's understood that hearing from the right sources is a very different thing to trying to understand yourself, trying to gather information and knowledge yourself and speculate on the absolute truth by your own intellectual endeavors. So hearing means that you take the subordinate position of a superior, a bona fide devotee of Krishna. So that's actually going to give us the substance which we're looking for, isn't it? The substance of the Vedas is going to be there, bhakti, devotion to Krishna. And then we can, when we engage in chanting, then there's that realization, there's that sambandha gyan. There's that relation to Krishna, that Krishna is very real for me. Because we've heard and we see Krishna in our lives much more. And when we chant, then there's so much efficacy in that chanting.
It's also worth mentioning how Lord Krishna explains to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita that the process for getting the truth is by approaching a spiritual master, inquiring submissively, and rendering menial service. So when you inquire, it's not just about asking questions, it's about hearing the answers. If you don't hear the answers, what's the point of inquiring? And that hearing the answers very nicely is actually devotional service.
Well, yeah. And actually, that's thank you, Prabhu, for adding that, because we read the principles of good sadhu sangha before every session, and so one of those principles is actually to inquire submissively, and so that's actually part of the process. So we don't want to have this sangha group, this reading group, simply for hearing in the background. We want everyone to be engaged and participate and actually take active role. So because we're hearing it, we're thinking about it, then we want to inquire deeply, which is exactly what's going on as we read, because Sukadev Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit are having that conversation. It's a back and forth conversation. So much to the extent these chapters are coming about because Parikshit Maharaj actually asked, what happened for 1 year? Why didn't the boys tell their parents about the killing of Aghasura for a whole year? And that's because he asked that question, the whole Brahma Vimohan Leela came about. So you can see practically how there's that much more depth to the devotional service when the inquiry takes place and the hearing is done in a devotional submissive mood. Okay, could you please read on, unless there's any other questions, comments? No? Thank you.
The Lord is all-pervading, as it's stated by Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. Everything is sustained by me, but at the same time, I'm not in everything. Since the Lord is all-pervading, there is nothing existing without his knowledge. The all-pervasive nature of the Supreme personality of Godhead can never be within the limited knowledge of the living entity. Therefore, a person who has attained steadiness of the mind by fixing the mind on the lotus feet of the Lord is able to understand the Supreme Lord to some extent. It is the business of the mind to wander away over varied subject matters for sense gratification. Therefore, only a person who engages the senses always in the service of the Lord can control the mind and be fixed at the lotus feet of the Lord. This concentration of the mind upon the lotus feet of the Lord is called samadhi. Until one reaches the state of samadhi or trance, he cannot understand the nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There may be some philosophers or scientists who can study the cosmic nature from atom to atom. They may be so advanced that they can count the atomic composition of the cosmic atmosphere of all the planets and the stars in the sky, or even the shining molecular parts of the sun or other stars and luminaries in the sky. But it is not possible to count the qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Wow. That's astonishing, isn't it? I find that really astonishing. What do you all think? So what do you think of when you hear the word samadhi? What do you picture? What is your understanding of samadhi?
So till now, I used to think that a sage is sitting cross-legged with his hands like this and then closing his eyes, and he gives up his body. Probably he's in a trance. But now I understand that concentrating on the lotus feet of the Lord is also samadhi.
Another place this reminds me of read where Srila Prabhupada explains samadhi to be active. Samadhi is an active principle because you're meditating on the supreme living force, Krishna. You know, sometimes we see that image that comes to mind, you know, like someone who's just kind of in this impersonal or this kind of inactive, inert state. But here Prabhupada is saying that therefore a person who always engages the senses in the service of the Lord can control the mind and be fixed at the lotus feet of the Lord. This concentration of the mind upon the lotus feet of the Lord is called samadhi. So I was just thinking, because Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, or in the what we call the Nectar of Devotion by Srila Prabhupada, he quotes that Sarvopadi vinirmuktam tatparatvena nirmalam rishikena rishikesa sevanam bhakti ruchyate. Very important verse. Very important because this is the definition of bhakti. You know, sometimes when we ask what is bhakti yoga, how would we very succinctly explain it? Is given in this verse. Yeah, so it's a very important verse from the Nectar of Devotion. So it begins Sarvopadi vinirmuktam, that to begin the bhakti process we have to remove ourselves from the worldly designations, that I am a mother or a father or a husband or a wife or the son or grandson or daughter, whatever bodily, I'm a such and such a worker, I have such a home and such a house and a car and so many things. We have to, first of all, understand actually who we really are, because these are all material conceptions. We have to understand, who am I really? Who is the soul really? I'm the servant of Krishna. I'm the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. That's actually the position of the soul. Sarvapani vinirmuktam, then tatparatvena nirmalam. So we have to perform a practice which is going to remove all of these upadis, or all of these unwanted designations, and all of these identities. If we attach to them, if we become those identities, then we'll not really become our true spiritual identity, which is the servant of Krishna. So how do we attain, how do we become purified? What process do we take up? That's the bhakti process. And what is that process? Rishikena Rishikesha. Sevanam bhaktir uchate. So this bhakti is known as bhaktir uchate. This bhakti is known as Rishikena Rishikesha. That using the senses to serve the master of the senses. Yeah? Krishna is called Rishikesha, which means he's the master of the senses. And so we have senses. We have these, we discussed it last week, I think it was the 11 senses, isn't it? Right? So at least we know the 5 senses. And then we also have the 5 working senses. And we have the mind. So we use everything we have, actually, even our possessions, even our relationships in this world, we can use in the service of Krishna. Huh? So this is actually bhakti, using our senses, using everything we have in the service of Krishna, always remembering that I am the servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna. Everyone is the servant of Krishna and I am their servant. So this is like the samadhi which Rupa Goswami is describing. This active samadhi. If we go around with this conception that I am the servant of Krishna, everything I do is for Krishna, then we'll always be in this trance, as it said, of samadhi. Is that okay? So it's very practical. Anyone, we can all do that. Just change our conception to Krishna consciousness. So unless anyone wants, we've just come up to 9 o'clock now, haven't we? Okay, just in the time. Anyone else want to share any final thoughts on this, what we read today? Also, I just want to say, in closing then, that we're working on a little questionnaire for you all, a little survey, because we'd like to find out what you think of the group, how well it's going for you, or how it may not be going. I'd like to get your positive and negative feedback, honest opinions. We're just developing a little questionnaire which will be coming out to you in the coming week or so. That's going to be sent out by Jigna on our WhatsApp group. So please give us your feedback, participate in that. Really be appreciated, so we can serve you nicely. Okay. I don't have any further announcements. So I also just want to finish by saying then that we wish Satyanarayan Prabhu all the best. He's recovering now from his open heart surgery, as we heard at the beginning of the meeting. And of course, wish all the devotees all the best in the health and Krishna consciousness in the week ahead. Okay, thanks very much, everyone. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you. Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna to
Hare
everyone.
Krishna, everyone.
And best wishes to Satyanarayan Prabhu.
Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everybody. Hare